Hey, what's up? Good morning, good morning. I am your girl, Pastor Courage Molina of Bold Faith Community Church. We're an online church helping people to build a relationship with Christ through the study and application of the Word of God. We really want you to become bolder in your faith and more confident in your calling so that you can experience God's best in your life. And so that's what we do here at the church. And one of the ways that we do that is by reading the Bible and building the habit of being in the Word every day. So if you're about that, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and subscribe to this channel. You don't want to miss it. We also have a podcast. We interview people. This is a great place for people who want to have bold faith. Welcome to our mornings in the Word. I am going to be reading Second Kings chapters 5 through 8 from the New Living Translation. We are on day 184, the chronological Bible reading plan. So let's get into it. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, "I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy." So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. "Go and visit the prophet," the king of Aram told him. "I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel." So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read this letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, "Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him: "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elijah's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message: "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of your leprosy." But Naaman became angry and stalked away. "I thought he would certainly come out to meet me," he said. "I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord his God and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed?" So Naaman turned and went away in rage. You have a problem. You can't solve it on your own. And so somebody suggests that you go see a person. That person says they can't help you, but somebody sends for you. He was offended so fast at the fact of, the prophet Elijah didn't come out to see him. He didn't do it the way he felt like he should do it. He had this thing, this idea, this narrative. He probably had it on his way over there. He was like, "Okay, I'm going to go and they're probably going to do this and that," right? The way he thought it was going to be done. And because it didn't look the way he expected it to look, he left in a rage. Now, how many of us have done that? We expected for somebody to help us with a certain tone, with a certain way. We expected for them to treat us better. Whatever. He felt mistreated. He felt played to the left. How many times have you walked away in a rage because somebody didn't speak to you or deal with you in a certain tone, even though you went there to get a problem solved and you still ain't got your problem solved? Verse 13, it gets better. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it?" Oh, that's for somebody. The Lord is just telling you to trust him. He's just telling you to show up consistently. He's just telling you to provide free content. He's just telling you to pray. And because the thing that he's giving you seems so simple, He's just asking you to use your gift. And because it's a gift that you were given, it's so easy for you. It's like, well, it's got to be harder than this. Mm-mm-mm. If the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply, go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. Do you see what kept Naaman from walking away, not getting his healing? Do you notice what it was? It was the people that he was with, he was in close proximity with, those that had permission to speak to him, those that had permission to speak into his life, to call him out, to show him like, okay, that's okay. I see you mad, but if he had told you to do something hard, would you have done it? Okay, well, just go. He told you to do something easy. Just go do that easy thing, right? It's because a friend, somebody who cared about him. Yes, I get it. You know what I'm saying? That it wasn't his actual friend, right? It says, but his officers, these are people that he worked with. This is his squad. It was like, do you have a squad that will point out when you are getting ready to miss out on a blessing or a breakthrough? Or are you so sensitive, can't nobody correct you? Nobody can say anything to you because you immediately go into victim mentality. So you immediately go into defending your behavior. Hey, maybe you should try to do this instead. And you're like, well, I'm just not going to do nothing. It was Naaman's friend that prevented him, his officer, his squad, his coworker, whatever, that prevented him from walking away and not getting his healing. So verse 14 says, so Naaman went down to Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. Then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant. But Elisha replied, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept any gifts. And though Naaman urged him to take the gift, Elisha refused. Then Naaman said, all right, but please allow me to load 2 of my mules with earth from this place, and I will take it back home with me. From now on, I will never again offer burnt offerings or sacrifice to any other God except the Lord. However, may the Lord pardon me in this one thing. When my master, the king, goes into the temple of the god Rimmon to worship there and leans on my arm, may the Lord pardon me when I bow too. Go in peace, Elijah said. So Naaman started home. There's a whole lot there, but we still haven't got through chapter 5. Let's keep going. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master should not have let these Arameans get away without accepting any of his gifts. As surely as the Lord lives, I will chase after him and get something from him. So Gehazi set off after Naaman. When Naaman saw Gehazi running after him, he climbed down from his chariot and went to meet him. Is everything all right? Naaman asked. Yes, Gehazi said, but my master has sent me to tell you that 2 young prophets from the hill country of Ephraim have just arrived. He would like 75 pounds of silver and 2 sets of clothing to give to them. By all means, take twice as much silver, Naaman insisted. He gave him 2 sets of clothing, tied up the money in 2 bags, and sent 2 of his servants to carry the gifts of Gehazi. But when they arrived at the citadel, Gehazi took the gifts from the servants and sent the men back. Then he went and hid the gifts inside the house. When he went in to his master, Elijah asked him, where have you been, Gehazi? I haven't been anywhere, he replied. But Elijah asked him, don't you realize that I was there in spirit when Naaman stepped down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to receive money and clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and cattle, and male and female servants? Because you have done this, you and your descendants will suffer from Naaman's leprosy forever. When Gehazi left the room, he was covered with leprosy. His skin was white as snow. He let his greed cause him to lie and run after. And I want you to hear that he's saying there's a time. This ain't the time for that. Is this the time for that? This ain't the time for that. It might be the time sometimes. And that's the thing that I think that we miss. It's not necessarily the thing, it's not necessarily the act. It is on what side of obedience does this fall? Is this on the side of obedience or is this on the side of disobedience, right? Where does this fall in the will of God for this particular situation? Is this falling in the will of God or is this falling on the outside the will of God? It's not always that the act in and of itself of receiving gifts in and of itself is not evil, but where did it fall on the will of God, right? On the inside or outside? And clearly it was on the outside because he had to lie to get it. Okay. Chapter 6. One day the group of prophets came to Elisha and told him, as you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. Let's go down to the Jordan River where there are plenty of logs. There we can build a new place for us to meet. All right, he told them, go ahead. Please come with us, someone suggested. I will, he said. So he went with them. When they arrived at the Jordan, they began cutting down trees. But as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the water. Oh, sir, he cried. It was a borrowed axe. Where did it fall? The man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot. Then the axe head floated to the surface. Grab it, Elisha said, and the man reached out and grabbed it. We're talking about a metal axe. This right here is showing us the anointing that is on Elisha. Ordinary things, come on, Jesus. Ordinary things can have extraordinary results in the hands of God's chosen, in the hands of God's anointed. Verse 8, when the king of Aram was at war with Israel, he would confer with his officers and say, we will mobilize our forces at such and such place. But immediately Elisha, the man of God, would warn the king of Israel, do not go near that place, for the Arameans are planning to mobilize their troops there. So the king of Israel would send word to the place indicated by the man of God. Time and again, Elisha warned the king so that he would be on the alert there. The king of Aram became very upset over this. He called his officers together and demanded, which of you is the traitor? Who has been informing the king of Israel of my plans? It's not us, my lord the king, one of the officers replied. Elisha, the prophet in Israel, tells the king of Israel, even the words you speak in the privacy of your bedroom. Go and find out where he is, the king commanded, so I can send troops to seize him. And the report came back. Elisha is at Dothan. So one night, the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to surround the city. When the servant of the man of God got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. Oh, sir, what will we do now? The young man cried to Elisha. Don't be afraid, Elisha told him, for there are more on our side than on theirs. Then Elijah prayed, O Lord, open his eyes and let him see. The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. As the Aramean army advanced toward him, Elisha prayed, O Lord, please make them blind. So the Lord struck them with blindness as Elijah had asked. Then Elisha went out and told them, you have come the wrong way. This isn't the right city. Follow me and I will take you to the man you are looking for. And he led them to the city of Samaria. As soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha prayed, O Lord, now open their eyes and let them see. So the Lord opened their eyes and they discovered they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he shouted to Elisha, my father, should I kill them? Should I kill them? Of course not, Elisha replied. Do we kill prisoners of war? Give them food and drink and send them home again to their master. So the king made a great feast for them and then sent them home to their master. After that, the Aramean raiders stayed away from the land of Israel. We could have killed y'all, but we didn't. I saw this definition once of meek. Meek does not mean that you don't have any strength or that you don't have any power. It is having the power and strength to do something and deciding not to use that power. That's what meek. They had the power, the means, the ability to kill them. But they were meek and not showing, not using that strength and power, and instead feeding them and sending them back where they came from. Verse 28. Sometime later, however, King Ben-Hadad of Aram mustered his entire army and besieged Samaria. As a result, there was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 pieces of silver, and a cup of dove's dung sold for 5 pieces of silver. Wow. One day, as the king of Israel was walking along the wall of the city, a woman called to him, "Please help me, my lord, the king." He answered, "If the Lord doesn't help you, what can I do? I have neither food from the threshing floor nor wine from the press to give you." But then the king asked, "What is the matter?" She replied, "This woman said to me, 'Come on, let's eat your son today. Then we will eat my son tomorrow.'" That is quite the famine, right? "So we cooked my son, and ate him. Then the next day I said to her, 'Kill your son so we can eat him.' But she has hidden her son." Oh. When the king heard this, he tore his clothes in despair. And as the king walked along the wall, the people could see that he was wearing burlap under his robe next to his skin. "May God strike me and even kill me if I don't separate Elijah's head from his shoulders this very day," the king vowed. Elisha was sitting in his house with the elders of Israel when the king sent a messenger to summon him. But before the messenger arrived, Elisha said to the elders, "A murderer has sent a man to cut off my head. When he arrives, shut the door and keep him out. We will soon hear his master's steps following him." While Elisha was still saying this, the messenger arrived, and the king said, "All this misery is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?" Elisha replied, "Listen to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord says. By this time tomorrow in the markets of Samaria, 6 quarts of choice flour will cost only 1 piece of silver, and 12 quarts of barley grain will cost only 1 piece of silver." The officer assisting the king said to the man of God, "That couldn't happen even if the Lord opened the windows of heaven." He's saying tomorrow. Things are so bad right now that people are convincing people to kill their son and eat it. Tomorrow, we're going to eat mine. You know, things are that bad. The famine has been that way for a long time. It's obviously extremely dire. And now this guy's like, okay, tomorrow, everything's going to be different. Everything's going to be better tomorrow. It's going to be great. Tomorrow's going to be way better. That could never happen. That's what they're saying. It could never happen. Things have been this bad. Makes me think of things like racism, discrimination, corruption. These are things that we've been experiencing and that have gotten severe. We've just seen them over so much time. Can you imagine a man of God coming and saying, tomorrow, we won't just be saying that people are treated equally, but people will actually be treated equally? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, would you believe it? Even if it's something that you were praying for, would you believe it? The officer assisting the king said to the man of God, "That couldn't happen even if the Lord opened the windows of heaven." But Elijah replied, "You will see it happen with your own eyes, but you won't be able to eat any of it." Now there were 4 men with leprosy sitting at the entrance of the city gates. "Why should we sit here waiting to die?" they asked each other. "We will starve if we stay here. But with the famine in the city, we will starve if we go back there. So we might as well go out and surrender to the Aramean army. If they let us live, so much the better. But if they kill us, we would have died anyway." So at twilight, they set out for the camp of the Arameans. But when they came to the edge of the camp, no one was there. For the Lord had caused the Aramean army to hear the clatter of speeding chariots and the galloping of horses and the sounds of a great army approaching. "The king of Israel has hired the Hittites and Egyptians to attack us," they cried to one another. So they panicked and ran into the night, abandoning their tents, horses, donkeys, and everything else as they fled for their lives. When the men with leprosy arrived at the edge of the camp, they went into one tent after another, eating and drinking wine, and they carried off silver and gold and clothing and hid it. Finally, they said to each other, "This is not right. This is a day of good news, and we aren't sharing it with anyone. If we wait until morning, some calamity will certainly fall upon us. Come on, let's go back and tell the people at the palace. So they went back to the city and told the gatekeepers what had happened. We went out to the Aramean camp, they said, and no one was there. The horses and donkeys were tethered and the tents were all in order, but there wasn't a single person around. Then the gatekeeper shouted the news to the people in the palace. We had this great thing, and there's a part, especially if you've been starving or you've been without or you've been deprived for a long time, it's like we want to hold on to it tight. We want to hoard it and keep it for ourselves, even though we know that other people are suffering. They're saying, oh no, if we do this, that's some faith, that's some spirit, that's some maturity. If we do this, it ain't gonna end well. So let's go and share. Verse 12, the king got out of bed in the middle of the night and told his officers, I know what has happened. The Arameans know we are starving, so they have left their camp and have hidden in the fields. They are expecting us to leave the city, and then they will take us alive and capture the city. How often, I'm going to stopping. I know I got a whole nother chapter to get through, but how often does some blessing come and then you don't trust the blessing? You prayed for it. Oh, that's for me. You prayed for God to make a way. Lord, please help me get this car. And I know that if you help me to get this car, you're going to help me to maintain it. And then you got the car, and then you worried about making the payments every single month. Oh God, I want a home. Please help me get this home. Then you bought a house. The Lord helped you get a house. And now every single month you're concerned that you're not going to be able to keep it. You're going to lose it. Or you're waiting for something bad to happen. How often do we experience that? Verse 13, what if his officers replied, we had better send out scouts to check into this. Let them take 5 of the remaining horses. If something happens to them, it will be no worse than if they stay here and die with the rest of us. So 2 chariots with horses were prepared, and the king sent scouts to see what had happened to the Aramean army. They went all the way to the Jordan River, following a trail of clothing and equipment that the Arameans had thrown away in their mad rush to escape. The scouts returned and told the king about it. Then the people of Samaria rushed out and plundered the Aramean camp. So it was true that 6 quarts of choice flour were sold that day for 1 piece of silver, and 12 quarts of barley grain were sold for 1 piece of silver, just as the Lord had promised. The king appointed his officer to control the traffic at the gate, but he was knocked down and trampled to death as the people rushed out. Oof. So everything happened exactly as the man of God had predicted. Then when the king came to his house, the man of God had said to the king, by this time tomorrow in the markets of Samaria, 6 quarts of choice flour will cost 1 piece of silver, and 12 quarts of barley grain will cost 1 piece of silver. The king's officer had replied, that couldn't happen even if the Lord opened the windows of heaven. And the man of God had said, you will see it happen with your own eyes, but you won't be able to eat any of it. Who knew that meant he was going to be dead? And so it was, for the people trampled him to death at the gate. I thought maybe his mouth was going to be shut, or he's going to be sick or swollen or something. No, the man is dead. Okay. Chapter 8. This is our last chapter for today. Elijah had told the woman whose son he had brought back to life, take your family and move to some other place, for the Lord has called for a famine on Israel that will last for 7 years. So the woman did as the man of God instructed. She took her family and settled in the land of Philistines for 7 years. After the famine ended, I keep saying famine. I don't know what that's about. After the famine ended, she returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to see the king about getting back her house and land. As she came in, the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God. The king had just said, tell me some stories about the great things Elijah has done. And Gehazi was telling the king about the time Elijah had brought a boy back to life. At that very moment, the mother of the boy walked in to make her appeal to the king about her house and land. Look, my lord, the king, Gehazi exclaimed, here is the woman now, and this is her son, the very one Elijah brought back to life. Is this true? The king asked her, and she told him the story. So he directed one of his officials to see that everything she had lost was restored to her, including the value of any crops that had been harvested during her absence. Elisha went to Damascus, the capital of Aram, where King Ben-Hadad lay sick. When someone told the king that the man of God had come, the king said to Hazael, take a gift to the man of God, then tell him to ask the Lord, will I recover from this illness? So Hazael loaded down 40 camels with the finest products of Damascus as a gift for Elisha. He went to him and said, your servant Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, has sent me to ask, will I recover from this illness? And Elijah replied, go and tell him you will surely recover. But actually, the Lord has shown me that he will surely die. And Elijah replied, I'm going back to verse 10. And Elijah replied, go and tell him you will surely recover. Tell him he will surely recover. But actually, the Lord has shown me that he will surely die. Elijah stared at Hazael with a fixed gaze until Hazael became uneasy. Then the man of God started weeping. What's the matter, my Lord? Hazael asked him. Elijah replied, I know the terrible things you will do to the people of Israel. You will burn their fortified cities, kill their young men with the sword, dash their little children to the ground, and rip open their pregnant women. Hazael responded, how could a nobody like me ever accomplish such great things? Such great things. Elijah answered, the Lord has shown me that you are going to be the king of Aram. When Hazael left Elijah and went back, the king asked, what did Elijah tell you? And Hazael replied, he told me that you will surely recover. But the next day, Hazael took a blanket, soaked it in water, and held it over the king's face until he died. Then Hazael became the next king of Aram. Verse 16, Joram, son of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, began to rule over Judah in the 5th year of the reign of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. But Jehoram followed the example of the kings of Israel and was as wicked as King Ahab, for he had married one of Ahab's daughters. So Jehoram did what was evil in the Lord's sight. But the Lord did not want to destroy Judah, for he had promised his servant David that his descendants would continue to rule, shining like a lamp forever. During Jehoram's reign, the Edomites revolted against Judah and crowned their own king. So Jehoram went with all his chariots to attack the town of Zair. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he went out at night and attacked them under the cover of darkness. But Jehoram's army deserted him and fled to their homes. So Edom has been independent from Judah to this day. The town of Libnah also revolted about that same time. The rest of the events in Jehoram's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. When Jehoram died, he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Then his son Ahaziah became the next king. Ahaziah, son of Joram, began to rule over Judah in the 12th year of the reign of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 1 year. His mother was Athaliah, a granddaughter of King Omri of Israel. Ahaziah followed the evil example, everybody evil, of King Ahab's family. I mean, they're following these examples. They did not see how these people ended up. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Ahab's family had done, for he was related by marriage to the family of Ahab. Now, they keep saying who these people married to, and I'm not saying this, but it seems like to me there is a connection. Are y'all picking up that connection? He did evil just like these folk, and he wasn't even in their bloodline. They married in, just like the last one. Verse 28, Ahaziah joined Joram, son of Ahab, in his war against King Hazael of Aram at Ramoth Gilead. When the Arameans wounded King Joram in the battle, he returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds he had received at Ramoth. Because Joram was wounded, King Ahaziah of Judah went to Jezreel to visit him. This is really juicy. This right here, when I read these ones where it's like the prophet Elijah and all these people fighting, it sounds like a really good movie. Does it not sound like a good movie? Like people trying to take over for power. He didn't put a wet cloth over the man's face and just kill him for power so that he can turn and do evil himself. It's crazy. I hope this has blessed you and has gotten you to a place where you are excited about being in the Word of God. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll know whenever we drop videos. which is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. EST, mornings in the Word. And again, on Saturday, we are here live and live in the chat at 8 a.m. On Saturday mornings, and we meet immediately after that to get into our live groups. And so if you're looking for an amazing community, then you're probably in the right place. We are more than a channel, friend. We are a community. So be sure to share this and invite other people that you know and love to join the community with you. Be sure to like this video before you go if you like the video. All right. And we'll see you tomorrow with Mornings in the